Have you ever felt the urge to disappear from everyone? Not answering messages, not seeing anyone, cutting contact, even with people you love. Not just for a day or two, but really disappear. To vanish into a space where no one can reach you, where no one expects anything from you, where you don't have to perform, explain, or justify your existence to anyone. Here's what's unsettling about this feeling. It's not always loneliness. In fact, most of the time, it has nothing to do with loneliness at all. Many times, it's a deep psychological mechanism, a survival strategy that your mind has developed in response to something far more complex than simple antisocial tendencies. And stay until the end, because there's a silent reason why some people isolate themselves, and almost no one understands it. Not their friends, not their family, sometimes not even mental health professionals who haven't looked deep enough. Let's explore the real reasons why some people want to pull away from everyone, starting with one that's far more common than most people realize. Reason 1. Chronic emotional saturation. There are people who don't isolate themselves because they hate others, but because they are emotionally exhausted. Not the kind of tired you feel after a long day at work. This is a different kind of exhaustion, one that seeps into your bones, that makes even the thought of a simple conversation feel like climbing a mountain. These are the people who have spent years, sometimes decades, listening to other people's problems. They're the ones friends call at midnight when life falls apart. They're the ones who remember everyone's birthdays, who check in when someone seems off, who carry the emotional weight of their entire social circle without ever being asked if they can handle it. They've been carrying expectations, meeting them, exceeding them, being the strong one, being the reliable one, being the one who's always there. They've become so good at this role that people don't even realize it's a role anymore. It's just who they are, the helper, the rock, the one who has it all together. But here's what no one sees: the constant recalibration required to meet everyone else's emotional needs, the mental energy spent managing other people's feelings while suppressing your own, the invisible labor of emotional caretaking that never appears on any to-do list, but somehow consumes most of your day. And one day, often without warning, the mind says, enough. Not in anger, not in resentment, but in pure, undeniable depletion. Pulling away becomes the only way to rest. It's not about punishing anyone. It's not about making a statement. It's about survival. The person experiencing this often can't even explain it to others. How do you tell people who depend on you that their dependence is drowning you? How do you set boundaries with people who've never had to respect them before? How do you say, I can't be there for you right now, when your entire identity has been built around being there? So instead of explaining, they disappear. They stop responding to messages. They cancel plans. They become mysteriously unavailable. And from the outside, it looks like they've changed, like they've become cold, or distant, or selfish. But from the inside, it's the opposite. They haven't become less caring. They've just reached a point where if they don't pull back, they'll completely fall apart. It's not selfishness. It's emotional survival. It's the psychological equivalent of a pressure valve releasing before the entire system explodes. This type of isolation often comes with enormous guilt. The person withdrawing knows they're letting people down. They can feel the disappointment, the hurt feelings, the whispered conversations about how they've changed. But they also know that the alternative, continuing to give from an empty well, is no longer an option. And this connects with something more profound, something that exists beneath even the exhaustion. Reason 2. Hidden emotional hypersensitivity. Many people who isolate themselves feel too much, not too little. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of human psychology. From the outside, these individuals often appear stoic, detached, maybe even cold. But that external presentation is actually a protective shell around an extremely sensitive core. They perceive tensions that others miss entirely. They can feel the shift in a room when someone's mood changes. They notice the micro-expressions, the slight change in tone, the pause that lasted half a second too long. They pick up on criticism that was never spoken aloud, on rejection so subtle that the person rejecting them doesn't even know they're doing it. This isn't paranoia, it's not overthinking, though it's often dismissed as such. Research in sensory processing sensitivity has shown that approximately 20% of the population has a nervous system that processes stimuli more deeply than others. For these individuals, every social interaction is like turning up the volume on life. A casual conversation at a party isn't just a casual conversation. It's processing dozens of simultaneous inputs. The words being said, the body language, the subtext, the group dynamics, their own responses, how those responses are being received, what they should say next. Each interaction drains mental energy at a rate that people without this sensitivity can barely comprehend. Where others might feel energized by social connection, hypersensitive individuals often feel depleted, not because they didn't enjoy the interaction, but because their nervous system has been working overtime the entire time. So isolation becomes a filter, a necessary mechanism to reduce the overwhelming flood of emotional and sensory information. Fewer stimuli means less pain, less exhaustion, less constant vigilance. It's like finally being able to take off a heavy backpack you've been carrying all day. From the outside, they seem cold. They decline invitations. They keep conversations brief. They create distance. People interpret this as lack of interest or even arrogance. But the reality is the opposite. They're not avoiding connection because they think they're above it. They're managing their nervous system's limited capacity for stimulation. Inside, they're anything but cold. They're experiencing emotions with an intensity that can be almost painful. They're replaying conversations, analyzing interactions, feeling deeply about things that others have already forgotten. They're emotionally hyperactive in a way that's completely invisible to everyone around them. This creates a painful paradox. They often crave connection desperately, yet connection is what exhausts them most. They want to be understood, but explaining their experience often leads to dismissal. You're just introverted, people say, not realizing that this goes far deeper than introversion. Or, you're too sensitive, as if sensitivity were a character flaw rather than a neurological reality. But there's a reason more complex than exhaustion or sensitivity, one that transforms isolation from a coping mechanism into something potentially more harmful. Reason 3. Learned distrust. Some people pull away because they've learned through painful experience that getting close to others leads to hurt. This isn't a belief they chose. It's not a conscious decision. It's a pattern recognition system in their brain that has identified a threat and developed a defense mechanism. Every human being enters the world with a natural instinct for connection. Babies are hardwired to bond, to trust, to reach for others. This isn't learned behavior, it's biological. Our survival as a species has depended on our ability to form secure attachments and cooperative relationships. But then life happens. Betrayals occur. Someone you trusted completely reveals your secrets. Someone you loved abandons you without explanation. Someone you believed in humiliates you publicly. Someone you gave everything to takes it all and leaves. The first time this happens, it's devastating, but recoverable. You process the pain, you grieve the loss, you eventually open yourself up to trust again. You tell yourself it was an exception, a mistake, bad luck. But when it happens again, something shifts. Your brain, which is fundamentally a pattern recognition machine, starts to notice a pattern. Not just, this person hurt me, but people hurt me. Not just this relationship failed, but relationships are dangerous. The third, fourth, fifth time it happens, the pattern becomes a rule. A silent, often unconscious rule that governs your behavior. If I don't get close, they can't hurt me. If I don't trust, I can't be betrayed. If I don't love, I can't be abandoned. Isolation becomes a psychological shield, carefully constructed over years of painful lessons. It's not because these people don't want connection. In fact, they often want it desperately, but they no longer believe it's safe. They've done a cost-benefit analysis at a subconscious level and determined that the risk of pain outweighs the potential for joy. What makes this particularly insidious is that learned distrust tends to be self-reinforcing. When you expect people to hurt you, you either attract people who confirm that expectation or you interpret neutral behavior through a lens of suspicion. Someone doesn't text back immediately, they're pulling away. Someone criticizes you constructively, they're attacking you. Someone asks for space, they're abandoning you. These interpretations then lead to defensive behaviors, pushing people away before they can hurt you, testing their loyalty in ways that strain the relationship, maintaining emotional distance even when you crave closeness. And when people inevitably respond to these behaviors by actually pulling away, it confirms your original belief. See, I was right not to trust. The tragic irony is that the people most wounded by broken trust are often the ones who trusted most deeply to begin with. They weren't naive or foolish. They were open, genuine, willing to be vulnerable. And that openness is what got weaponized against them. Over time, they learn to hide that soft, trusting part of themselves. They develop a harder exterior. They become suspicious, guarded, quick to spot red flags. And while this protects them from some types of harm, it also isolates them from the very thing they need to heal: safe, genuine connection. Reason 4. Loss of identity in relationships. There are people who don't isolate themselves because they're exhausted, or because they're hypersensitive, or because they've been deeply hurt. They pull away for a reason that's harder to name, harder to explain. They isolate because they no longer know who they are when they're with others. Imagine someone who, from a young age, learned that acceptance required adaptation. Maybe they grew up in a family where their authentic self wasn't quite acceptable. Their interests weren't quite valued. Their personality wasn't quite right. Their opinions weren't quite welcome. So they learned to adjust, to read the room, to become what others needed them to be. And they got good at it. So good that people loved the version of themselves they presented. They made friends easily, had successful relationships, were well-liked and respected. But somewhere along the way, something got lost. The real them, the authentic core of who they were, started to fade. It didn't disappear all at once. It was gradual, like a photograph left in the sun, slowly losing its color and definition. During years, sometimes decades, they adapted, they gave, they stayed silent about what they truly thought. They changed their behavior, their interests, their very way of being to fit into relationships, to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to be loved. Each individual compromise seemed small, agreeing to activities they didn't really enjoy, laughing at jokes they didn't find funny, staying quiet when they disagreed. None of these things feel catastrophic in the moment. They feel like normal relationship maintenance, like compromise. But compromise and self-erasure exist on a spectrum, and it's frighteningly easy to slide from one to the other without noticing, until one day, something shifts. They catch themselves about to express an opinion and realize they're not even sure it's actually their opinion or something they've adopted to fit in. Or they gradually become aware that when they're alone, they feel more like themselves than they do with anyone else. When they're alone, they feel clearer. Their thoughts are their own. Their preferences matter. They can be exactly who they are without performing, without adjusting, without the constant mental calculation of how to be in order to be accepted. But when they're with others, even people they love, they feel confused. They're not sure which reactions are genuine and which are performed. They can't tell if they actually agree or if they're just avoiding conflict. They feel small, diminished, like they're watching themselves play a role rather than actually living. This is when isolation stops being about avoiding others and starts being about finding yourself. It becomes a desperate attempt at reconstruction, a retreat to figure out who you are underneath all the versions of yourself you've created for other people. The problem is that identity isn't built in isolation. We're fundamentally social creatures. We discover who we are, in large part, through our interactions with others. So isolating to find yourself creates a painful paradox. If you stay in relationships where you've lost yourself, you continue to erode your sense of identity. But if you pull away completely, you remove the very context in which identity is formed. And here's the truly unsettling part. If these people don't pull away, they feel like they're losing themselves. But if they isolate too much, they risk not knowing how to come back. They risk becoming so accustomed to being alone that any relationship feels like a threat to their carefully reconstructed sense of self. The solution isn't to force themselves back into the same relationships that led to the loss of self, but it's also not to stay in isolation indefinitely. The real work is learning to maintain a sense of self within relationship, to be authentically you while also being connected to others, to adapt without disappearing. This is extraordinarily difficult work, especially for people who've spent their entire lives being rewarded for adaptation and punished for authenticity. And now comes the most delicate part, the reason that's often confused with strength, with independence, when in reality, it's a warning sign that something fundamental has broken. Reason 5. Emotional disconnection as defense. Here we're not talking about wanting to be alone. We're not even talking about needing space. We're talking about something more extreme. We're talking about shutting down emotionally as a survival mechanism. When someone has felt too much pain for too long, when their heart has been broken one too many times, when disappointment has become the norm, the mind does something extraordinary and terrifying. It reduces emotional capacity as a protective measure. It's like a circuit breaker that trips when the system is overloaded. The technical term is emotional numbing, but what it actually feels like is watching your life from behind glass. You can see what's happening, you understand intellectually that certain things should make you feel certain ways, but the feelings themselves are muted, distant, sometimes completely absent. The mind reduces attachment because attachment has become synonymous with pain. It reduces the need for others because needing others has led to disappointment. It reduces the desire for connection because desire is just another word for vulnerability, and vulnerability is what gets you hurt. This happens gradually. First, you stop hoping for the best because hope has led to disappointment. Then you stop getting excited about possibilities because excitement makes the letdown hurt more. Then you stop caring as deeply because caring hurts when things don't work out. Layer by layer, feeling by feeling, you construct a buffer between yourself and the full emotional experience of life. And here's what makes it so insidious. It works, at least in the short term. You hurt less. Disappointments sting less. Rejections bounce off more easily. From the outside, this often looks like strength. People admire your apparent calm. They comment on how nothing seems to bother you, how you've got it all together. You might even believe it yourself. You tell yourself you've matured, that you've developed healthy detachment, that you're no longer needy. But from the inside, if you're honest with yourself, it's not strength. It's anesthesia. It's emotional anesthesia that you've administered to yourself because the pain of feeling everything was no longer sustainable. And here's the problem that most people don't see until it's too late. When you disconnect to avoid suffering, you also disconnect from feeling joy. Emotions don't work like a selective filter where you can block out the painful ones while keeping the pleasant ones. When you turn down the volume on pain, you turn down the volume on everything. The same mechanism that protects you from the devastation of heartbreak also prevents you from experiencing the euphoria of falling in love. The same walls that keep out disappointment also keep out delight. The same detachment that shields you from rejection also distances you from genuine connection. People in this state often describe feeling like they're going through the motions of life. They do what they're supposed to do. They show up. They maintain basic relationships. They might even smile at appropriate moments. But underneath, there's a pervasive sense of emptiness, of going through life without actually living it. The truly dangerous part is that this can persist for years without anyone noticing, because unlike depression, which often comes with visible symptoms, emotional disconnection can look like high functioning. You can be professionally successful, socially adept, outwardly normal, while internally feeling like you're watching someone else live your life. And because it develops as a response to pain, because it serves a protective function, it's incredibly difficult to let go of. Even when you recognize that you're not fully living, that you've sacrificed joy along with pain, the thought of lowering those defenses is terrifying. So you stay in the disconnection. You stay in the isolation, not because you prefer it, but because the alternative, full emotional engagement with life and relationships, feels impossibly risky. You've forgotten what it feels like to trust that you can handle your own emotions. The connection might be worth the vulnerability it requires. This is where isolation becomes not just a choice, but a cage. The critical question, pulling away from everyone, isn't inherently a problem. The problem is understanding why it's happening. There's a world of difference between self-care and self-harm, between healthy boundaries and pathological withdrawal. So let's break this down with the most important question you can ask yourself. Am I isolating to take care of myself or to avoid feeling? If you're isolating for self-care, it has specific characteristics. It's temporary, it's restorative, meaning you actually feel better when you're alone. It's selective. You might withdraw from some relationships while maintaining others. And it doesn't come with overwhelming guilt or a sense that something is fundamentally wrong. But if you're isolating to avoid feeling, it looks different. It's often indefinite. It's not particularly restorative. You might feel safer alone, but not better. It tends to be absolute rather than selective, and it usually comes with significant guilt, anxiety, or a pervasive sense that you're not living the life you're supposed to be living. Here's another way to think about it. Healthy isolation moves you toward something, toward rest, toward clarity, toward healing. Unhealthy isolation moves you away from something, away from pain, away from risk, away from the possibility of being hurt. The direction matters enormously. When you're moving toward something, isolation has an endpoint. When you're moving away from something, there's no natural endpoint. The thing you're avoiding will still be there tomorrow, next week, next year. Understanding is the first step. If this exploration has made you think about someone you know, someone who's pulled away, and you couldn't understand why, perhaps you have more insight now. Perhaps you can see that their isolation might not be about you at all. It might be about exhaustion you can't see, sensitivity you've never experienced, wounds you didn't know existed, an identity crisis happening beneath the surface, or an emotional shutdown that's invisible from the outside. If it's made you think about yourself, if you've recognized your own patterns in these descriptions, know that understanding is the first step toward change. You can't fix what you don't understand. You can't heal patterns you can't see. Isolation is a message from your psyche that something needs attention. Sometimes it's a message that you need rest. Sometimes it's a message that you need safety, that you've been hurt and need time to heal. Sometimes it's a message that you need to find yourself. The key is learning to listen to what the isolation is trying to tell you, rather than just staying in it indefinitely or forcing yourself out of it prematurely. With understanding comes choice. Right now, if you're in patterns of isolation, you might feel like it's just happening to you, like something you can't control. But when you understand the mechanism, when you can see the pattern clearly, you regain agency. You can start to choose differently. Maybe you choose to respond to one message instead of ignoring all of them. Maybe you choose to examine whether your distrust is warranted in this specific situation. Maybe you choose to notice when you're adapting yourself out of habit. Maybe you choose to feel one emotion fully instead of shutting down all of them. These small choices, made consistently over time, can shift the entire trajectory. They can be the difference between isolation that swallows you and isolation that serves you. Understanding your mind, understanding these patterns, understanding the psychology behind why you do what you do, is perhaps the most powerful way to return to the world. Not as a different person, not as someone who's fixed, but as someone who knows themselves well enough to navigate the complex territory between isolation and connection with greater wisdom. And that's worth everything. If this video made you think of someone or of yourself, don't ignore it. Understanding the reason is the first step to recovering balance. And if you want more content about real psychology, human behavior, and what almost no one says out loud, subscribe, because sometimes understanding your mind is the most powerful way to return to the world.